Welcome to New Light Living Podcast. I'm Ulrika Sullivans. I'm an intuitive spiritual life coach and a galactic astrologer. Today, I have such a beautiful guest with me for a conversation. Her name is Sabrina Savoy. Welcome, Sabrina. How are you?
I'm well, Ulrika. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here today.
Yes. And today we have come to a beautiful topic, I feel, and which I can sense that many of us are really thinking of or working with. And that is from outer uncertainty to inner stability. And I felt like when we had a chat before this recording, I was just like, yes, this is what at least I need now. And hopefully many with me and us. So we came to that conclusion that all the uncertainty that we may be feeling or dealing with in our lives, and how we can make that shift and come back to inner stability or whatever we want to call it. But it's that inner peace that we can come back to. And we're also knowing that there's a lot of astrology enthusiasts that are listening to this podcast nowadays, since I often bring in the galactic astrology and those types of conversations nowadays. And so we will have some sort of a astrology spin to this conversation as well. So stay with us for this beautiful conversation. And before we get into all the juicy information here and conversation, Sabrina, why don't you let us know who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Sabrina Savoy, if you are new to me, and I'm a quantum energy worker. I started my journey with Usui Reiki in 2008, and I am a Reiki master and teacher as well. So that is the foundation for all my work. I've done 250 hours worth of yoga teacher training, meridian qigong training, so a lot about the body and the spirit. And then recently how Ulrika and I met was through the galactic astrology course, quantum soul guidance. So just in June, this past June, I became a certified quantum soul guidance practitioner. So now I'm combining my experience and expertise in energy work and pairing it with the galactic astrology.
Beautiful. Yes, we can we can talk for a long time, but
Yeah.
let's get into today's topic. And first of all, Sabrina, why do you feel that this, you know, going from all the experience that we may have around uncertainty, maybe outer, but also inner uncertainty, why is it relevant to come into a way or find a way to find inner stability? Why is it relevant now?
Well, now more than ever, it feels like, oh, okay, we need a really solid foundation to return to when the outer world, it feels like it's crumbling and changing in ways that we cannot actually foresee where it's going or how exactly this is changing the direction of our collective lives. We must create our own foundation internally and have that solid base to return to. So it makes managing the outside world and responding to it so much easier and a little more gentler.
Yes. Yes. And I think it feels like it's becoming more and more evident that we are in a phase now in our evolution where we are looking to individualize this way of how we come into inner stability, because for the longest time it may have been like the best top method, right, that everyone wants to follow, but that's not really what we're talking about here. Right.
It's more individual. We're realizing, oh, it's not one size fits all. We have different ways to find that inner stability, and through that we all experience the outer reality slightly different as well.
Yes. So let me ask you this. I'm just curious, when you define inner stability, what
Hmm.
comes to you?
Okay. Well, I love that question, but inner stability for me means like it's my home to return to, that I know when I return to this place, I'm safe and the floor is steady. It's not shaking underneath my feet. Um, so it's that place of comfort that I know always exists within me when everything else feels uncontrollable or chaotic.
Mm. Yeah, so let's soak that in for a moment, because this inner stability is, I feel that that's really something that has a unique texture within each person. It's a unique kind of garden, if you call it that, with different flowers. And it feels like it's also this adventure that we
Yeah.
are invited to go on to expand that inner garden. Like, what is it that we can find out that we actually is bringing us comfort?
I
Yeah.
love that you called it an adventure. Um, and that feels like a great opportunity to share an adventure. And um, my outer stability, like on a very personal level, so aside from collective, but very personally speaking, um, yesterday was my mom's birthday. So she passed away about 12 years ago now. Um, and she was born on a full moon. So yesterday was a full moon. So it was a really powerful day for me. And not only that, but I've been studying the moon declination. So that means a declination, all planets do this, is how they're moving around, orbiting around the sun and the earth on the ecliptic. So there's a measurement for that. And sometimes planets and the moon goes out of bounds, which means it's orbiting beyond that ecliptic line north and south. So this moon yesterday, all the way until December 2nd, this year, December 2nd, 2023, our moon is still going to be orbiting out of bounds. And when this happens, everything is uncharted. We are really going into something beyond the orbit, beyond the regular consciousness that we know of. And many things can happen, like in miraculous ways and devastating ways and wild and radical ways. And I'm personally experiencing something quite radical and wild, and I'm not sure how to make sense of it. So I've literally been needing to take my own medicine so I can show up here today to do this interview with you. So I shared it was my mom's birthday. I have two cats. One got sick somehow. She just woke up yesterday and was walking like she was drunk, like stumbling, falling over. Took her to the vet. It's kind of a question mark. She's healing, doing some antibiotics. And this morning, around 7:30, so it was 7:33 because I had to check the time. My other cat just passed away. She came upstairs for her morning treat and had either a stroke or a heart attack right there on our floor. So many thoughts went through my mind, like, do I need to cancel this? What, I had a little I guess, departure ceremony for our beloved cat. And I believe it's a placement in my 8th house, and I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart and Pluto. So I'm able to hold space for death and transformation. And without it consuming me, I needed to come back into my place of inner stability. So that was my adventure this morning, to see, okay, everything is very chaotic right now. Can I retrace the steps back into myself to find that inner stability? And we did a little breathing exercise before we started this call, and I feel pretty stable. So
Mm.
yeah.
Oh, Sabrina, I'm so sorry for your loss of your cat, and hopefully the second cat is gonna be all good. But really,
Thank you.
truly sorry for your loss, and thank you for showing up here to share this very profound example of exactly what we're talking about. How do we let that experience of chaos, uncertainty flow through us and find inner stability in the moment, but also in the days, weeks, years ahead?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Ah,
I wanted to still show up. I thought this was exactly our topic on a personal level. And
yeah.
here is the adventure. And I think that's why I love that word you said so much, because in it's our perspective on situations too. Like, are we holding this as a very negative and doom and gloom experience, or can we just shift the consciousness slightly to say, this is kind of like an adventure and a walk through the garden, to see if we can remember, how can we return home? You can still feel all the feelings, the sadness, the grief, the uncertainty, because that is an actual reality. But can we hold space for all these feelings and emotions in our place of feeling stable and feeling like we're home and safe to do that?
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. What we're talking about here today too, and our intention to help support building a greater foundation for how we walk that path to always come back to that inner stability, whatever is showing up on our in our day, um, and what that is. So I'm just going to move on here to ask you of some of your experiences of how to find that out within ourselves. What actually works in terms of how we define inner stability, like, and actually match it with something that we can anchor to the
Mm-hmm.
physical realm. Because it could be a practice. For many of us, it's to actually have some sort of practice or ritual that we can return to every day, that
Right.
we know for a fact that works. It always will bring us to that higher vibration, no matter if it's like for you, it was a really, sounds like very, very traumatic. And some days are not like that, but
Right.
that same ritual, same practice that works for you, and you were reaching for it. What's your some of your learnings, some of your wisdom around that, in with the intention to help others be curious about their own garden, so to say, what works for them and how they can take a step forward
Right.
and deepen that in
Mm-hmm.
support of themselves?
Okay. Well, first, I want to start off by saying there is no right or wrong way. And it's also okay if the way you get to that place of stability changes, that it's not exact every single time, especially for people maybe with more air in their chart or more water, where holding a schedule or a routine is a little challenging, to put the pressure on ourselves to feel like, oh, it has to be done this way or else I'm doing it wrong or whatever. That's just going to create more of a panic or chaotic energy. So first, just be okay with the system or whatever you're using to change. You're allowed to change, and the system's allowed to change. So right away, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Or if you do like the routine and the schedule, if you're more of that earth sign or Pitta energy, like more grounded and slow moving, like that's okay too. Have the 1 to 5 steps that you follow like a routine, and that's perfect too. So I think it starts with the very first foundational step is just honor your authenticity. If so and so says have a schedule, but a schedule doesn't work for you, accept that. You don't have to force the puzzle pieces to fit if they were never meant to connect. And then I always think of my breath. Everything that's alive, we all have one thing in common, and that's our breath. I consider breath as spirit, or the universe, the God, the source. So I right away just have to connect with my breath. And then I follow the breath to pay attention. Where is the breath going? When I breathe it in, I think of, okay, I'm going to breathe in and invite source into my body, take me home, and find a place in my body where it lands. Usually it's my belly. And that's funny. You and I have briefly talked about human design, and I am a sacral authority. So that's where my breath goes, to the sacral. But someone else, it might go to their feet or their mind or their throat. And just know that that's okay. You are discovering your own adventure. You are discovering the way that works for you. And right away, you need to know there are no rules for that. And you're creating the guide for that in the moment. So there's no book already published. And then it builds from there. So sometimes, like you said, when not every day is so chaotic. So sometimes it's just that, oh, pay attention to my breath. Let me remember that source that I'm inviting in. Okay. But then on days when it's maybe a little more heavy or a little more chaotic, sometimes I really need to pay attention to what's going on outside. I'll need fresh air. I'll need sunlight or starlight, depending on what time of day it is. I might need to journal or write or shake off my body. Fortunately, I do some yoga, so I can just spontaneously do a yoga flow or something just to help come back to myself, come back in my body, and remember that all of these things are experiences, and we can use them all to learn from. And when I think of source and a higher power, I don't feel like these hard situations were made to break us, but they are here to show us, how about if we deal with it or respond to it in a different manner? Then what? So I'm really trying to be aware of that wisdom and pull it in as I live this life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for that wisdom, Sabrina. It's that, yeah, what you're saying is that it really is a journey of self-awareness, and in a way also self-respect, because it has to be a part of us that wants to make that shift from being in the space of uncertainty or worry or fear, right? To come into a space where we feel held, supported, loved, right, within ourselves. And it's like a self-sourcing loop, excuse me,
Right.
a
Yes.
self-sourcing loop that we can be in charge of ourselves. And I think part of what we're talking about here too is that's something that we can, reach for when the external world or in our external life in our day as a individual, and we
Yeah.
can create belief and trust in that it actually helps us. Because for so long we have been looking for external ways of and what works for others
Right.
and try to apply that. But what we're talking about here and that you so beautifully shared is this journey of finding out what works and what makes me feel better on the inside. And it requires it
Yeah.
requires that inner journey, inner walk, and it's not like a flip of a switch, right? It's a discovery. It's an adventure.
It's an adventure.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there is there needs to be some kind of belief in um, self-responsibility and becoming aware that as a collective, many humans right now are really taking action steps to overcome victim consciousness or victim mentality. And we do that through responsible action and understanding what's going on inside of us and using that worldly stage to create these practices to come back to ourselves and keep expanding and stretching our consciousness so we can learn other ways. Because it's not really until, and this is so much of a Pluto lesson, that it's so much of a journey through hardships and darkness, but being brave enough to handle it or respond to it in a new way and just slowing down. For me anyways, this is how I'm trying to articulate how it felt to just slow down and know that it's okay. Like, to know that I'm not in this world alone. I have a source. I believe we all came from somewhere because we're here. And if we can just slow down and take a moment to think how we're responding, sometimes it makes all the difference.
Mm.
And to just challenge ourselves just enough to even take a micro step in a new direction. And then that micro step maybe turns into a bigger step and then a bigger step. And then slowly you are paving and creating your new way. But it all starts with something.
Yes. Yeah, and I picked up on something you said earlier too about, I love the way you kind of highlight also how we can understand ourselves through our astrology chart and just by looking at the elements.
Yeah.
To see, because many of you listening or watching this is like, where do I start? If there's something that you feel strongly connecting with this conversation, that okay, I want to do this for myself, I want to go on this journey and this adventure, but where do I start? And the way you brought it up, Sabrina, through even just looking at the elements in your astrology chart. What is the dominant element? Are you earth sign, for example? Or there's multiple ways to look at this in multiple layers, but sometimes it's a start to just get to know that what is my preference for pace, for example. Is it and what you said too, Sabrina, too, like notice where in your body is the resistance, or where is the location of my fear, and start asking ourselves that question of the body, because the body knows and can show us the way if we just ask the questions. So there's a lot of information that we can learn about ourselves, and we don't always have to figure it out with our mental domain, right? So part of it, the message here is, I feel too, is that there are other ways to gain information about ourselves and what works for us than just asking, how can I figure it out, right? It's an opening of ways of receiving information. So I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It's like an invitation to take one step at a time. Like, okay, if I can just come back to my breath. I'm using myself as an example because that's usually how it starts. I'll come back to my breath. And then once that feels okay, something else will reveal itself. And then you just take those steps one by one instead of having it all mapped out. Sometimes it might happen like that, which is great. And sometimes it doesn't happen like that, which is also great. So really giving ourselves permission to experience the full spectrum of life. And
so let me ask you this. What is one of the best things that have come out of you having this practice or way, or knowing about what works for you to come back to inner stability? And today obviously was a clear example of a benefit, so to say. But in general, what is one of the best things that have come out of this?
It makes me a more confident person. It helps to put self-doubt at bay, because I've seen myself in very challenging circumstances, and I witness myself how I respond. And I know if I wasn't strong on the inside, that it would have been a very different outcome or experience. So to return back to the inside, where there is a home and there is some stability, it helps me feel as a person in general just more calm and connected to who I am. So when other, masks come your way and try to pull something out of you that's not really you, you already know what's kind of happening. Like, oh, they're either instigating me or trying to get a response out of, or something. That's just one example. There could be millions, but that's just what came to mind.
Yeah.
It just makes you more solid in who you are.
Beautiful. Yeah. And if we want to talk about also, we talked about the squares in our life, right? And astrology is so beautiful because it can give us a heads up on when squares are happening in our lives. Basically, in our chart indicates often what we're invited to grow into, or see from a different perspective. And I want to encourage everyone that is having their birth chart and overlay the transits, how the planets are traveling, and go see if there is some sort of square coming up in your chart, because that can often indicate a period of time, whether it's a slow moving planet or if it's a faster moving planet, such as the personal planets. It can highlight with pretty good accuracy some sort of growth opportunity, learning, or challenge that we were faced with. So I just want to encourage
Yeah,
everyone to kind of look ahead a little bit, maybe for the next 6 months, and see if
exactly.
there's an evident square in your chart, built between the transits and your personal planets. Because often what we're talking about here is to empower ourselves with the knowledge, the heads up, the look ahead, if you will. And that's why astrology is so beautiful, I feel. That we
So my Pluto, natal Pluto, is in my 6th house, and then I count 4 houses, and then that's where I'll find the transiting Pluto. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's Pluto in my 9th house. So it goes from my 6th house, and then transiting Pluto is in the 9th. And that's where a lot of my hard lessons, or the push to transform myself and expand, is showing up in these places.
Mm.
6th house is our house of daily habits and routines, which is very much like having a pet. It's a daily habit, a routine, health. Yeah, and that's in Scorpio, which is also very much like Pluto, deep and transformative, and learning how to change and transform.
Yeah, that's a super long-term
Yeah,
square that you're in the journey of right
yeah.
now, and definitely encouraging you to grow in many ways in your
Mm-hmm.
daily life. And I think that's perfect in terms of the topic we're talking about here. A square such as yours is really encouraging you to strengthen that spiritual practice, to bring it into your daily life, make it really the foundation. And yeah, as just as an example, what Pluto square like yours could be. Yeah, and if we look ahead just in the collective, just as an example, in January, there are actually even the first day of next year, Venus in Sagittarius is going to square Saturn in Pisces, very
Nice.
early degrees of the signs there.
It's like the kickoff to the year, and I find it really fascinating that, we're just coming out of holiday season around family and loved ones, and Venus is showing up to ask you, where am I going to create love? And Sagittarius is that traveler and very philosophical, open mind. So this coming year, where are you going to create that love? And Saturn in Pisces is usually kind of opposite energies, because Pisces is a water sign and fluid, and it's hard to put boundaries in a vessel of water. Saturn is about the boundaries and structure, and I'm going to create love in this way. But what it feels like is, if we take that same lesson as I mentioned earlier, like, how can we change or heighten the perspective on these placements, instead of saying, okay, it's going to be bad because Pisces and Saturn are, one is hard, one is water, that's bad. How about if we say, the water is helping you hold compassion for building these boundaries where you're creating your love, and maybe that's the invitation to create that love for yourself, so you have this home to return to for the rest of your life. But it's such a great stepping stone, and like the first step into the new year in this calendar system, right?
Yeah. This
I
is awesome because we're here now, end of November, so we have a whole month
Yeah,
to
we could think
think
about
about
this.
how are we gonna, when the square shows up in the collective on January 1st, as an example, is we get a
Oh,
heads up. Oh, I
oh,
got
did you just do balloons?
I did. Like
That's so cool.
that's
Yes.
awesome. So that's just one way of applying this. We can apply it to the external world. We can apply it in looking for these squares and asking ourselves those questions and how like proactively.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly. We could look to the galactic alignments for just to like give the viewers a nice
yeah.
insight into this first square of the year. Saturn is going to be sextiling with the super galactic center at only 53 seconds. So or orb. So that's a very tight degree, which is very powerful. The sextile is that more positive, almost like your spirit guides are encouraging you and supporting you, and like your cheerleaders. Yes, you can do this. And then the square with Saturn, Saturn is actually conjunct Fomalhaut, one of the royal stars, at 56 seconds. So, I mean, there's such a divine sprinkle of light on this square. So
Yeah.
it's like our source is encouraging all of us to grow and expand through the challenges. Where can we stretch and fill into love even more?
Absolutely. Wow. Yes. And thank you for bringing in that as well, because, this is in it's at, for those who are curious, it's at 3 degrees, 18 minutes, which is the first decan also. So there is an invitation here to actually do something physical about it, right? To bring it into form. At least we will be prompted to do so. So yeah, I think, thank you, Sabrina, for playing with me here to kind of work with these squares of our lives and how we can make them be more, next level, if you will. It's that opportunity for growth rather than, oh my gosh, it's just it's something that's going to be super challenging, which is not saying that they can, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
an experience. So thank you for exploring this topic with me in a way that may not have been done before, in the same sense, linking it into our own inner stability and how a square in our life can be a path from chaos, uncertainty, to inner stability and comfort and self-love. And so anything else you want to add before, because I know there will be many who are connecting with our conversation today that wants to know more about you. So anything you
Okay.
want to share first before we go into how people can reach out to you?
Sure. There's one kind of silly thing that I'd like to share. And anyone who has used social media may have seen this meme, but it comes out every year, like just before the new year. And it always says evolve or repeat, evolve or repeat. And I'm seeing these square alignments, especially starting January 1st with Venus and Saturn squaring, but with these beautiful high frequency galactic alignments. Can we evolve? Can we see this challenge almost not even as a challenge, but like the word you said in the beginning, adventure? Can we see this as our adventure of life? How can we find the joy and hold gratitude for all the things we experience? So evolve or repeat, it's a personal choice.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you. Perfect way to wrap this podcast episode up. So, Sabrina, how can people reach out to you? where can they find you?
Okay, thank you. You can find me on my website, which is piscesmoon.ca. I'm a Pisces moon, so it's very fitting, piscesmoon.ca. It's a Canadian website. I'm here just around Toronto, but I work worldwide. Sessions for energy work and quantum soul guidance are done remotely. So yeah, my website has all the information. I also have Instagram. I'm at piscesmoon.love. And I have a YouTube channel too, but I actually don't remember if it's piscesmoon.love, like my Instagram, but everything is on my website. So you can find me there.
Beautiful. Go check out Sabrina's website and all the beautiful offerings that she has there. So let's just leave this podcast episode with a question. Sabrina, what do you live by?
Spirit.
Spirit.
It's
Namaste to that. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who's tuned in, listening, watching to New Light Living podcast. I'll be back soon with another episode. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.